Okay. Who do we have online here? Is Mr. Berger online?
Yes, good morning, sir. My colleague Tracy Glassford and I are both online to support your committee meeting.
Okay, that was that presenter 2 then, or presenter 1? No.
I don't know who presenter 1. I think that might be Blair, actually.
And you say Tracy?
Tracy is should be identified on your screen, but yes, Tracy Glassford and I are both joining you via the Zoom link to support your meeting. And I would ask if Blair could please share his screen, if he is not already, to display. It looks like he already has the agenda up. Thank you,
Agenda's
Blair.
up, yeah.
Yeah.
And Scott, do you see Tracy on there on your screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I know she's on the
Yes.
phone as well.
Oh, I guess that's what he said. She's on the, he's on the, she's on the phone. Okay. Okay. So my name is Chris Caius. I am the chair of the Grand Victoria Riverboat Fund Committee, Riverboat Committee, and I'm calling this meeting to order Wednesday, January 10th, 2024 at 12:07. And with that, can we have roll call to establish quorum?
Caius,
Guys present.
Berman, Ford,
Board present.
Leonard,
Leonard, present.
Strathman.
Strathman here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you have 3 people in the room. That constitutes a quorum. And I believe Mr. Leonard is joining remotely. I think you have a process for approving that.
Okay, yes, well, I will ask for that there, since Mr. Leonard is online, I'll ask with no objection, we'll allow Mr. Leonard to participate in the activities today. It's okay with Mr. Berman, it's okay with everybody. Okay, great.
Thank
you
you.
for
Note that in the minutes.
Thank you for joining us. Then next item would be approval of the minutes from the Riverboat Committee, May 3rd, 2023. I would entertain a motion
Mr. Chairman,
in a second. Yes,
ask for unanimous approval of the minutes from May.
okay. Then Strathman has asked for unanimous consent for the approval of the minutes of May 3rd. And without objection, I do have one modification. It's a Scribner's error. I think on the second page, it has a, it may be corrected now in a packet, was had a last year's date, May 3rd. Or no, yeah, May 3rd, May 6th, which was the wrong date from 2022, but that Scribner error, with that minor modification, we will consider them adopted.
Duly noted.
Then can we? Oh, there we go. That's more like it. That would be internal. Then is everyone able to see the table that's on the, I think there's 3 basic things to understand in this. And that number 1 is that we're looking at a table that was typically presented should have been presented in something like August or September for approval for the budget. And then our recommendation would go off to the full board for approval or for the rest of the meetings and to the full board for approval. But in this case, because of the budgeting condition, what am I thinking of? The calendar this year, the modified budgeting calendar, all of these, with exception of the one in yellow, I believe, have been approved by the board thus far, so that any modifications that we present will then go to the board as an amendment, I believe. Does that ring about true, Scott?
Yes, that is true. If I can just summarize,
Sure.
as is our custom, annually, we did ask the various departments to let us know what they projected their fund balance to be at the end of the last fiscal year. That would have been November 30th, 2023, as well as their funding needs for the current fiscal year 2024, which began on December 1st. We did receive word from the departments that they anticipated having a fund balance of $4.3 million collectively. That is the first column you see in the center of your screen. That represents cash in the possession of the various special revenue funds that you see listed in column 1, the fund number. These are kept separate from your general fund because they are special funds that are dedicated for specific uses, hence the title Special Revenue Fund. Just to the right of the gray narrow column, you see the FY24 budget figures. And as you've grown accustomed to seeing, the revenue sources for these special revenue funds at a minimum typically include the budgeted use of cash on hand. That is cash that they start the fiscal year with that is in their fund already, and how much of it they would like to use to cover expenditures during the fiscal year. And then the middle column in that right-hand section, highlighted primarily in green shading, shows you the amount of money that each program is requesting from your current fiscal year. That would be new money that would be transferred to those funds for their use to cover expenditures projected for the current fiscal year. So as you can see in the far right-hand column, you've got a set of programs and projects that will cost an estimated $7.3+ million. Of that, the departments project that they will use just shy of $3.5 million in funding they already have in their possession, as well as just over $3.8 million in new funding that they need. And Mr. Caius, as you noted, the one item that's highlighted in yellow was not included in the budget adopted on November 21st by the full board. And so the principal question that we have for you today will be whether or not you want to add that to the budget. Having said that, because we have the cart before the horse here and we kind of got our steps out of order in terms of working through the 2024 budget process, the other question that we have for you today is whether or not you want to amend any of the amounts that you see to the right of the gray column in the 2024 budget figures.
Okay,
Any
Mr.
questions?
Chairman?
then, yeah, any questions for,
Yes, Strathman here. Did I hear correctly, the amount available was 3.5 or is it 3.9 like it shows here? Did I hear it wrong?
Okay, so below the table, I didn't speak to the figures that are outside of the table.
Oh, okay.
Below the table, we have provided you, okay, so let me back up and say that we typically base our budgeting on the most recent allocation of gaming revenue that comes to Kane County. That typically comes to us in late April every year. So we've based our budget projections for 2024 on the most recent allocation of gaming revenue that came to Kane County. Based on that amount, we are projecting that you have available $3.988 million for internal projects. We have a requested amount of $3.8 million, which is the last green highlighted figure in your column above. And that leaves a balance of funding of just over $120 million.
Thank you.
okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'm not on, this is Alan, I'm not on the committee, but may I
Yes.
ask a question?
certainly.
Mr. Berger, the allocation from April includes this internal amount, and how much would be included for external grants next year?
The budget that was approved by the county board in November includes an amount for external grants of $1,019,801. If you take a look at the last page of your packet, and Blair, I'd ask you to temporarily fast forward to the next page. We have a budget document for your review that if you take a look at on the expense side, right in the middle of the document, you see external grants, $1 million. I'm sorry. Yeah, $1,019,801. Do you see that figure there? Looks to me
I do.
like, yeah, the hand is right next to that number if you look at your screen.
So does that mean that in April, we received approximately 4.8 million from the Grand Victoria?
If you look at the center column of figures at the very top, you'll see the exact amount that we received in late April of 2023.
That's
Four
perfect.
point,
Thanks,
yeah,
Thanks-
$4,948,000.
thanks very much. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. So again, just to kind of reinforce what Ms. Allen is saying, we base our budget for the coming year, or to be specific, the current fiscal year, we base that on the actual amount of revenue that we've received previously in the previous year. That way, the county board is sure not to over allocate and overextend the financial exposure of this fund.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, this is Leonard.
Mr.
Could I
Leonard?
ask Mr. Berger a question?
Certainly.
Mr. Berger, I really appreciate the detail on all this. It really makes things very clear. My concern on this is if we maintain the same proceeds or expect the same proceeds in April of 24, if they're higher or lower, obviously we will have to adjust. My concern is right now, if they are the same, what we're looking at is, approximately having to take $1 million out of the cash on hand in order to give both the internal and external grants approximately the same amount of money as they wanted last year. Is that correct?
I would suggest that that's not 100% correct. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the expense budget, you'll see that for 2024, we are expecting to save $121,000. That means that we have more revenue than we do expenses. And so our plan, as you see it laid out here, is to spend all the money that you received in April of 2023 minus $121,096 that would go to your fund balance.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the explanation. I guess I was off in my calculation. It's more like approximately 900,000 that we need to take out of cash on hand. Is that correct? And that's including
so
both
on the
internal and
revenue-
external.
On the revenue side of the budget, at the top of your screen, you do see a cash on hand figure. However, those dollars reside in other funds. Those dollars are not in Fund 120. Those dollars are funds that you previously provided to the departments that they have in their possession.
So in other words, and thank you for the explanation, having not gone over this in maybe 6 or 8 months, I'm kind of acquainting myself to it. So with respect to the amount of proceeds that we're anticipating, which should be about not quite 5 million, 4,948,000. If we satisfy all the requests on the internal, then in effect, we don't really have anything in reserve. And so we would be about $900,000 over budget if we use just the funds that we receive.
I don't agree with that statement, simply because I know that we're basing our budget on the known revenue that came in April of 2023 of just shy of 4.95 million. And we do have an interest amount that we expect to earn during the year. And so our budget balance, the budget that's been adopted by the county board, not only balances, but leaves surplus funds from the casino in the general, in the special revenue fund 120. So
thank you.
We are definitely within our spending limits. We're not in deficit territory. I guess that's what I would try to emphasize.
Okay, that's great. I really appreciate the explanation. And what do we have in reserves in Fund 120?
So if you look at the bottom of the screen, and Blair, maybe you could zoom in on this so it's even clearer to the group. Tracy Glassford, our finance manager, has projected what the fund balance will be at the end of the current fiscal year, assuming you don't receive any revenue from the casino this year, which is highly unlikely. And you see that figure is projected to be $3.409 million. It's the last bold figure in your spreadsheet there.
That's excellent. I understand what you're saying, and it looks like we're in good shape, and it looks like we are able to satisfy most of the requirements, not only internally but externally, without really having any consideration or concern about depleting very much or not having the funds available.
That is correct. And I would just say that in the last roughly 13 years, since my office has managed this fund on your behalf, we have basically achieved the soft landing that we wanted to achieve. At the time, we were in danger territory, very, very rapidly approaching the deficit spending territory. And we have kind of right-sized things over the years. And fortunately, if we receive roughly $5 million in revenue from the casino this coming April, you can see that the 3.4 million plus the 5 million that I'm speculating we might receive would effectively create a fund balance at 11/30 of roughly equal to what the fund balance was last November 30th, $8.4 million. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, is that clear?
It is.
Everyone?
Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Great, thanks, Bill. Good questions. So I'm going to see if it's okay with the committee here. I think maybe the first thing to do is, since we do have to make one amendment for sure, that is to include the $250,000 for the Geneva Creek. Oh, yeah. Can we go back to the,
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can we go back to that first screen? Thank you.
and it's in the highlighted in the yellow there, and as mentioned, it's not included in the budget. So I think the procedure is to do an amendment to the budget as it stands, and we may do other amendments as well, but at least to get this one out of the way, to include the $250,000 and the we modify that particular item and add that to the budget. The $500,000. Now that may change the bottom line on it, but
Yes,
$1,000. Yeah.
All right, I'll
Second.
second. Go ahead.
Okay,
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
that would be Berman, and moved by Berman and seconded by Strathman. Pick one. I think they both
Yeah.
seconded, forwarded Strathman. I'm getting coaching from our non-participant. Give it to Chef. Thank you, Mr. Roth.
He actually participated.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, well, he's here.
All right,
Okay.
because,
a
because
question.
Mr. Chairman, just one question for Mr.
Sure.
Berger. Thank you. With respect to the 2024 fiscal year budget request, the bottom of that total is $3,867,754. Does that include the 250,000?
it does.
Excellent.
Okay. So we have motion and second to include this as an amendment to the budget. And so can we have any questions, comments?
I just got one question that probably can't be answered now. It's almost self-explanatory what the project is, but it'd be nice,
Oh, the Geneva Creek.
right, get a little bit more explanation on it,
Well, we have Jody Wolnick right here.
Okay, I didn't see her.
Hi, speaking on behalf of building management, the Geneva Creek project is actually the contract you approved this month at county board. that was contingent upon the approval of this $250,000 under the Riverboat. So it'll include those 3 sections that were outlined by Rob Linky. Geneva Creek obviously is right over there. Stabilizing those sections and preventing all that pollution from getting into the Fox River.
Good.
And saving the church down there, the grotto, possibly from erosion and an early demise.
Correct. I'm trying to get also clarification with building management about the budget. I had understood that they included these funds in their capital projects for 2024, but I can't pull up the budget book on my phone. So would appreciate including that and we can figure that out if that's actually.
I'm sorry, what
being
was the question again?
included.
The comment?
My understanding is that building management did include those funds in the 2024 budget. But with not having a representative from them here today, I was trying to pull it up on my phone, but was not able to do that. So we could include it in the 2024 budget and then make adjustment if it is actually already in there.
Okay. I think if it's not in there, then, or if it's in there, then we're just formalizing that we're going to put it in there from here. If it's already in there, then.
Well, I can clarify, Mr. Caius,
great.
that
Sure.
the $250,000 transfer out is not in the Fund 120 budget. And typically the finance department is very careful to make sure before the budget is approved by the county board that all of the revenues and expenses are balanced. So if there was not a $250,000 revenue amount included in Fund 500, then I would have expected the finance department to flag that. But Ms. Wolnick will double check with both you, building management, as well as the finance department to make sure that we have our house in order pending approval of the county board.
Perfect. And I think that might be the piece that's missing, Mr. Berger, is that transfer out, because I believe they included the capital project for it, but maybe there wasn't that transfer out that was showing it was coming from Riverboat. Thank you.
Very good. We'll check that.
Okay, great. Then.
So you have a motion on the floor.
Oh, right.
Would you like us to take a roll call regarding?
Please, yeah, that would be
the
good.
motion
Thanks,
on the
Scott.
floor? Okay, Caius.
Roll call, please.
Caius.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Ford.
Ford, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Strathman.
Strathman, yes.
Passed unanimously.
Okay, that passes. Then I think the only other question I had was, and I discussed this with Scott a little bit earlier. I know it was a really compressed time frame, so I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody else on this as well. If you look at the, if we go back to our Grand Victoria, or whatever page that number is with that down there, whoop, there you go. You can see that in all of the projects, most of the projects, you have a, there's an the projected unobligated fund balances as of 11/30/23. That's that center column. Typically, what everyone has done is to use that entire amount and then ask for the difference to accommodate their budgeting for the year, except for funds number 220, 221, 223, and 230. And Scott, did you have a table that you can put up that identifies?
Yes, would you like me to share my spreadsheet regarding
Please.
the use of fund balances?
Can you, yes, can you?
Yes, give me just a moment to do that. Blair, will I be able to share my screen? I'm looking for the icon right now. And I'm not there, okay.
Again, I'll remind everyone that this has been passed by the county board, but
Okay, do you see my screen? Let me know when you see my screen.
we see it, yeah.
Okay, and so you've itemized, or you've noted 4 of the special revenue funds that are on the spreadsheet. I've highlighted the 4 that you just mentioned in green and calculated for you what, using the fund balance on hand, would do to these figures. And I know that Mr. Hunt is in the audience, and may want to weigh in on these revised figures.
And I vaguely recall from last year that we had a discussion about that, because typically in the budgeting process, what we ask is to use last year's funds, at least in other areas, and in the unobligated funds, along with the ask for this year to balance what and this doesn't, can you put the two tables side by side? Is that possible? I think it's too small.
I don't know how,
Because you guys
I
don't
don't
have
think I can
the,
do that,
don't have the
actually. I don't think
original-
I can share two screens at once.
okay, well, in those funds, and I'm glad Mr. Hunt is here, or is he still here?
He
Yeah,
is.
oh, there you are, Terry. Thank you for being here. There, the initial unobligated funds is 434 in, let's pick 220, Fund 220. And in the initial, they ask for, to request to use cash on hand of 144, even though the balance is at 434. This has and go back to,
Sorry,
that's all right. Sorry, I can't get these up side by side.
I can't, I'm trying to put both documents side by side and I can't seem to do it. I'll have to ask for a special tutorial from Blair at some point to see if that's possible.
Maybe you're not gonna happen.
Yeah.
The gist of it is those four funds, and that's what this table would be if those funds had used the a portion of their unobligated funds, and that's identified in those bright green. And so their ask is the difference between what they were asking to use and what was in the budget of 173,000, 52,000, 114, and 634,000. That would then reduce the amount, or actually we could use it in, sorry for getting a little confused here. I need to
No,
have these papers printed
I'm
out.
happy to
Could
walk
you-
the committee
Yeah,
through this
you
if
could
you'd
probably walk
like.
it through better than I can.
Okay, well, let me just take this one line at a time.
Yeah.
So sequentially, the first special revenue fund managed by the state's attorney on the table that you see is Fund 220, the Title 4D program. And the office has requested spending authority and received, in fact, approval to spend $173,969 for the year. And we noted that the unobligated fund balance as of the end of the last fiscal year was $434,764. So the green cells that you see on your screen indicate that we're projecting that the department or the office could utilize, of the 434, they could utilize 173,969 from their fund balance to cover their entire expenditure plan for the fiscal year. And then the next line is 221, drug prosecution. We've identified the utilization of the full $52,820, necessitating an additional allocation from the Riverboat Fund of $330,431. That would satisfy their total request of $383,251. In the domestic violence program, Fund 223, we're proposing utilization of the $114,939 that's on hand, supplementing that with $408,841 in new funding from Fund 120 to satisfy the total request of $523,780. And then finally, under Fund 230, the Child Advocacy Center, utilization of the full $634,000 of cash on hand in the state's attorney's office's possession, supplemented with $503,502 in new funding from the Grand Victoria Casino Fund, would satisfy the request of $1.138 million.
Does that make sense to you then, what I'm explaining anyway? So and you can see the rest of them, except for Fund 400, which has kind of a balanced difference there. That's an anomaly that there's actually budgeted more than they had in their account. Rather than use all of the unobligated funds, they're asking for more, which would mean that there's a carryover. And I'm glad you're here, that you can explain why and what the strategy is and the necessity for not using all of the unobligated funds from last year. Terry?
Thank you. Yes, this is Terry Hunt from the State's Attorney's Office. The column that's projected unobligated fund balance is obviously a projection. And I do not have the actual balances. Those were projections that had been started back in April of 23, and then they were updated periodically as we went through the budget process. The plan, and it was part of the presentation that we made in our request, was to utilize 1/3 of the projected fund balance that was available to reduce the amount of the required or requested Riverboat funds necessary to budget balance. So in each of those cases, we utilized 1/3 of the projected balance forward. Obviously, what we're trying to do is take a conservative approach, because we do not, at that time, we did not know exactly what that unobligated fund balance would be. And it seemed prudent not to overspend that money based upon a projection that was still up in the air. But yes, I understand what you're saying. Same principle, that we're taking a conservative approach to managing our funds so that we didn't use it all in one year and have to come back next year for a higher request from the Riverboat Fund.
Okay.
Mr. Caius, if I could just comment.
Sure.
I think this process has taken a number of years to get to this point. And when my office took over management of this fund, the Fund 120, the Riverboat Fund, there was a lot more money on hand in the other special revenue funds. Departments had accumulated cash that they relied on, as Mr. Hunt is suggesting, to cover cash needs based on a cash flow basis. My understanding from the finance department is that the county does have the ability to cover cash needs from a working cash fund. In fact, my office has a $1.2 million line of credit with Kane County so that we can expend funds and then seek reimbursement from various other governments. I would suggest that it may be prudent at some point here, especially as the cash on hand begins to dwindle in the various special revenue funds that you see listed. It may be prudent for the county to consider extending a cash flow line of credit to really all of these special revenue funds, provided they don't overspend the funds that have been committed to them.
That would be in lieu of the carrying a reserve in those funds?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that I appreciate Mr. Hunt's comments. I agree that as far as his management is concerned for these funds, he wants to make sure that he has cash in the fund to cover expenses. And he doesn't want his special revenue funds, I presume, to drift into negative territory. What I'm suggesting is that the county as a whole, I believe, does have the ability to absorb negative cash balances where reimbursements are pending or likely to come forward and make that fund whole.
So do you have a fund that covers that you're aware of?
You have a fund called Cash
have
on
a fund.
Hand.
And we
you have
can use it
received-
for that particular purpose?
Yes, and if Kathy were in the room, I would ask her that question, but there is a fund the county manages to cover cash needs pending reimbursement and receipt of revenue.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Then
It's
that
kind of a
was-
working capital fund, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Hunt, go ahead.
Yes, in the four highlighted special revenue funds in particular, we are constantly on the edge in Fund 221 and Fund 223 in terms of having available cash at any point in time. If we get a reduced amount in our Riverboat request, we will absolutely need on an interim basis to be able to access funds from something along the lines that Scott has suggested, but is not currently available to us.
But is not currently available to you.
Correct.
So yes, the green figures that you see come with, I should have put an asterisk on this table, which was prepared rather hurriedly, that I do believe that the state's attorney's office, as well as the other special revenue funds that you see listed here, should have access to the county's working cash fund, provided, a big asterisk here, provided that there is a secured funding source that the county can obtain reimbursement from.
Okay, well, we have any questions from the rest of the board here? Committee? Mr. Berman,
You know, the funds are just, they're either here or there. So it doesn't make any difference what they are.
so,
It doesn't, you know, it's. What do
and
you
I
think?
recall we had this discussion last time, I think.
Doesn't
too,
make
about
any
whether
difference.
To Mr. Berman's point, he's correct. The funds would either reside in Fund 120, the Riverboat Fund,
Mhm.
or they would reside in one of the other special revenue funds. If they are allowed to stay in the special revenue funds as per the request, we wouldn't have need of temporary loans or accessing a line of credit, so to speak.
Process
it's-
we're using, I think is fine.
Any other comments from the other board members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Leonard. Could I make
Yeah,
one
Mr.
point?
Leonard? Sure.
Yes, you know, in taking a look at what the state's attorney's office is doing, they're literally in this budget process that we have on the screen right now, they're using more of their unobligated fund and asking for less from the Riverboat. The
Yes.
one that we were going to vote on was different. So I guess my question is, which fund balance are we voting on? This one that you're showing now or the one we originally were presented?
Mr. Caius, may I
Mr.
comment
Berger.
about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Mr. Leonard, the figures that are in your published agenda packet, the one that we emailed you previously, with the exception of the $250,000 that's in yellow, all of those figures have been adopted by the county board and are in your budget. So the matter before you, I guess the possible question that's before you at this time is, to what extent do you want to recommend that the board adopt an amendment to its budget? And the green figures in the table in front of you at the moment represent revisions that could be made to the Kane County adopted budget. And that would involve amending the Riverboat Fund as a source of transfer out funds, and it would involve amending funds 220, 221, 223, and 230 to alter the use of cash on hand and the transfer in amounts from the casino fund.
So, thank you, Mr. Berger. So the impression I'm getting, at least from portion of our committee here, is that they don't have an appetite for changing what this exists as the original exists, and to just go ahead with the presented amounts as opposed to holding back some of this from those 4 accounts. Is that a consensus that I get?
Yes.
So then I will, if that's the case, is there anything else we need to deal with here, Mr. Berger?
No, we have no other pending items in front of you today.
Okay, so then do we need to vote this through then?
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yeah, Ms.
Alan.
Allen?
Can I fall into the discussion portion?
As long as it's not long, we got another meeting in 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. I'll send out a memo on this, but I'm just going to repeat what I've said before. if these state's attorneys' programs are vital to the county, and I believe that they are, then they should be included in the state's attorney's regular budget. It's just too dangerous to ask the Riverboat to come up with this money for state's attorneys' necessary programs. If something happens to the Riverboat, and it has happened in the past, if something happens to the Riverboat, this money goes down drastically. So I think it's far more prudent of us to say that if we want to support the Child Advocacy Center, the domestic violence programs, the drug prosecution program, the Title 4D program, then those should fall into the state's attorney's budget as part of the regular budgeting process, and we should fund them accordingly. I'm going to tell you about I'm going to remind you of a precedent. I'm sure you remember this. We used to have big asks from the drug court, from the Riverboat Fund, when they were trying to get the drug court program up and going. And because we admonished the drug court folks, saying you can't count on this money, we don't know if it's going to come in every year, they started pulling away. They started finding other sources and asking the county to budget drug court and finding grant money where they could. And you'll notice that they're not even here anymore. They are completely funded outside of the Riverboat. And I really think that's the direction, that's the safe direction to go in. Thanks for letting me vent at you.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you. You've been admonished, by the way. That was
Mr.
the
Caius,
state's
could
attorney
I-
has.
It's the most
Mr.
gentle
Hunt, was it?
admonishment I've ever gotten.
I know. Isn't it lovely? I'm going to have Mr. Hunt say something here. You have a comment?
To that end, Member Allen is absolutely correct. And it applies specifically to the CAC. It wasn't that many years ago, the CAC was part of the general fund. And as revenues were made available from other sources, it became a special revenue fund. Included in our budgets, like the Title 4D, that's the child support program. We have an external grant there that provides funding for basically all of the salaries and the fringes that are covered by the state's attorneys and one admin. Drug prosecution's a different situation. We have a 5-year grant that has been a fixed amount for the same years, and for FY24, it's $127,431, which covers a little less than half of the lead ASA and the first assistant ASA within that drug prosecution program. It doesn't cover the other ASAs or the admin that's assigned there. We will be seeking additional grant funding in the future, but the one we're living with right now has been fixed for some time.
I'm going to thank you for that information. I'm going to try and wrap this up, though. I appreciate all that information. And
Am I being
that would be good
admonished
to
in
know.
that?
But I think we've come to a conclusion that we could do this and vote it through the way it is right now. So that we'll have you back for more information later, but that way we'll be out of here and let the next meeting take over, if that's okay.
You know
You're
where
gonna
to
get-
find me.
You're going to get your money if that's any consolation. So then, Mr. Berger, are we good to go vote on this?
Yes, so my understanding, I've stopped sharing my screen here. My understanding is that you've already adopted a motion to add $250,000 in expenditures for the purpose of the Geneva Creek Stabilization Project. And that my understanding is that the committee's does not wish to make further amendments to the budget.
That's correct. So we'll now call for the vote.
So I'm assuming that what you'd like to do is act on a motion to effectively ratify the decisions made by the county board on November 21st.
Right.
With the
Do we
exception
have a
of
motion
one.
then? Or do we just start this? Do we need a motion?
I didn't hear a motion. I
Okay.
was assuming.
Berman motioned it. and
Ber-
Strath- she said-
Berman motion, Strathman seconded that, or that was the amendment.
To make the $250,000 addition to the expenditures.
Then we'll do Berman and Strathman on adopting this and sending it on to the county. And whatever appropriate paperwork we need to start to have the county adopt that $250,000 in the budget.
So
Is that
my
correct?
understanding is that you have a motion to forward the approved amendment or the requested amendment totaling $250,000 in additional expenditures, and we'll prepare that amendment for consideration by the Finance Committee.
Perfect. Sounded good to me.
Me too.
All right. Then we'll do roll call.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Berman's
Berman's yes. Oh, I can't
Ford.
vote for him. Sorry.
Yes.
He may be
Ford,
gone already.
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Strathman.
Strathman, yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, then can I have a motion and a second for adjournment?
There we go.
Any discussion? All in
I'm sorry,
favor?
I didn't catch them. Who made the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said it out loud.
Ford and Berman.
Ford and Berman.
Motion, Berman second. Unanimous, all in favor,
Aye.
without discussion. Yeah.